Hey everyone. Hope everyone's doing good. This is Anish again, and we are on day two of week three in our 7 week challenge. This is really exciting, everyone. We are done with week one and week two, and we have two apps on the App Store. Well, the second one is still in review, but I'm guessing by tonight or tomorrow I should have an update for you. This third application that we are building, the Smart Travel Stop, is a web application. And so we are taking a little bit of a twist where we are going to have a very similar backend architecture, but we are building a web application. And we started this yesterday where we defined the problem and went through a bit of the backend code on the Lambda function. And so, just to recap, what Smart Travel Stop is going to do is, let's say you're taking a long road trip. For example, my family and me were taking a road trip from Spokane, Washington to Seattle, Washington, and the trip takes about 3.5 hours. So there are some of us like me that have no sense of direction, right? And so when we are coming on this trip, let's say we wanted to stop at a rest stop, and my wife and family, they don't really like public rest areas, for example. So let's say we wanted to stop at travel stops or gas stations or just better rest places that have better restrooms that are highly rated. What do we do? So one option is we could just keep, I could type on my phone or ask my wife to type on the phone on nearest flying j or something like that, but it doesn't really give you a good idea about where these rest stops are. And so what I decided to build this week is to have an application that can actually figure out what are the optimally placed rest stops along the route. And when I say that, I mean time optimal as well. So not something that's every 1.5 hour, 2.5 hour, 3.5 hours. For example, after 2.5 hours there may not be any gas stations, right? So we want to be smart about this, and that's what I went through the Lambda function in yesterday's demonstration. And so, if you didn't have a chance to look at this, please take a look at yesterday's video. So, the twist in this particular week is we are doing a web application, and the second is it has to do with a little bit of algorithm and tweaking in the back end, which is what we did yesterday. And so today, what we are going to do is we are going to quickly look at the front end and look at the final demo of what we are actually going to have. And so let me quickly show you what I'm doing on the front end. The front end is going to be a React piece of code. And so if you're not very familiar with React, this is usually the structure. So package lock, you put all your environment variables here, like the Google Maps API key and the Places API key. And then within the source directory is where all the important action happens. So there is the app.js, which is the heart of the entire application. And I have two components here, one for a search bar and one for the map with the stops. And so what are those? This is how the final demonstration looks like. So if I put an origin, let's say Houston, Texas. So you can see here that these autocomplete features are also here. Let me do Houston, Texas. And all of that is from the Places API from Google. Okay. And so Houston, Texas to Dallas, Texas. And then let me go ahead and plan stops. And so what it's going to do is it's going to look for the route in between and then smartly come up with a stop here. So here, for example, you can see that it came up with a stop here. And if you go here, oh, it's a Bucky's too. All right. So you can see why it comes up with Bucky's, because I take into account, like yesterday I showed in the algorithm, what is the average rating. If it has more reviews, you boost it more. If it has higher review stars, you boost it more. And so these are all it has taken into consideration and come up with Bucky's, and the stop it's giving is in this particular location. So you can see here that the entire trip is 3.5 hours, and I'll probably add the features on how far exactly is Bucky's from here by the end. Maybe it's 1.5 hours or 2 hours or something. And so that's where we are at. So let's quickly go through the front end code, and there are a few things are gotcha moments that I really want to point out. All right. So Here you can see that this is the search bar that I have here, and the map with the stops. Ultimately, that's another component, and the app.jsx is a wrapper all around it. And so let me go into the search bar.js. And so the search bar is a pretty straightforward code. All it's going to do is have some use effects. The key thing I'm using here is the use places autocomplete from the Google Maps API, and all of that comes from, if I go in here into the package.json, you can actually see what was the package that you need to install. And so let me move this here. So this use places complete version 4.0.1. This is the latest version, and that's compatible with all of this. So I have the React Google Maps API that I need, and the use places autocomplete. If you remember, I didn't have any bedrock and things like that in here. I could have made it even more smarter by adding some features of bedrock, but I didn't. Right? So from that, I'm going to have, when I type in, I have the autocomplete feature. And then the next thing I want to do is make sure that when I have this clear all, everything automatically clears off, because I don't want lingering data to be in there. By the way, all of this goes to a Lambda function through API gateway. As all of you know, by now, this is the same architecture we have been doing for the third week at this point. And what we are now going to do is, once we have that, we are just going to have some use state and use effect activities. So for example, here, when I'm going to select something, these are all the different places that I'm going to, or the values that are going to be returned. And all of this is just going to be the input and style and all of that. And once I do that, I'm getting the input, right? I'm going to get the input that is now sent to the cloud, because all I need is the origin and the destination. Once I have those two parameters, then I'm just going to post it to the API gateway. Okay, and where does that code come in? That is going to come in the app.js. Okay, so in the app.js, if you look at this, you can see here that there is these uh, use effect statements. And so here, quickly to say, this, the origin location is going to be in a local storage, and the destination also in the local storage, and all of these are going to come from that search bar.js. And once we are done with that, we are going to get the route info from an immediate perspective. Remember, when I just typed this Seattle to let's say Portland, okay, it immediately comes up with this. Okay, so that itself is going to automatically come first from an API call, and after that is where the plan stops is going to come in. So this is just some cool features that you can have. All right, and that comes in because of these lines. So the route information state with the local storage initialization automatically happens. And then the next thing is, if I'm going to refresh this particular page, I want to have in memory what happened the last time. Okay. So here you can see that Seattle to Portland is going to be there. So that state is going to be persistent. It doesn't have to be that way, but I have it in here in this case. And then the local storage clearing part I'm having. All right. And then comes the main function, which is the planning the stop function. And so here is the key of everything. This is the API gateway URL. And so I'm going to hit the API gateway. And once it's going to be done with that, you're going to get the trip time, which I showed you, that the trip time in minutes, and the number of hours that are going to be planned before a stop happens. Okay, so you're going to update the state with all the results. Okay, and so here you can see that once we are done with that, then we are just going to do all sorts of cleaning up, putting some HTML uh, things in here, like all the heading and the clearer, and when you hit clear all, what happens, and in the search section, what happens. All of these are just going to be div styles, and what happens on click, what happens on mouse over, what are all these different actions that happen. And the plan stops is going to do the on click, is going to do the handle plan stops. And that is going to go and get the call back, which is going to be that JSON object, which is, and that JSON object is going to be parsed. So we looked at the JSON object and what it is by testing from the Lambda console yesterday. So the same thing is going to come out. We are going to parse all of that, and once we parse it, we put it in a fashion that looks like the previous output that I had. Okay, I'll run once again. So Seattle to Portland, for example, and then plan stops. So you can see this. I live around here, so it should be 2.5 hours, and so it just gives one stop here, and GC's truck stop doesn't seem too enticing to me, but it has 3,338 reviews. That's how I'm rating it, right? And I talked about it yesterday. All right, so that's pretty much it. And the last one is the showcasing on the map. Okay, so again, this is all the green dot, the blue dot, the red dot, all these regular things that you see on a regular map. All of this is gotten directly from the Google Map Places API. There is also a JavaScript API that you have to enable. So if you have never seen the um, Google Map API, let me quickly maybe go through that and show that to you. So Places or Google, let's go to the Google Cloud Console and I'll tell you what are all the things that you have to enable. May not go to the right account, but we'll figure it out. Okay. Because you need the JavaScript API enabled for it for the maps. Okay, so that's the key thing. So if I go in here and then go to APIs and services, and then I go into library, these are all the different APIs that you need to enable. Okay, so here you can see that this one you need enable, and the maps JavaScript API you need for your website. Okay, so the moment you do this, you have to go in here and click enable. Okay, so that is one definite API that you need, and this is what I'm using everywhere. And what I didn't do is a turn by turn direction. If you want, you can enable this particular API as well. I have enabled it, but I'm not using it anywhere. So what that means is point A to point B, it will show you the direction, point B to point C, just like Google Map does. But my whole point is we build this application and then people can just plug it into Google Maps and get the answer there. Okay. All right. So again, those three pieces of code, are just straight up JavaScript code, and there are two components: a search bar and a map with stops. And the app.js is the main function that holds everything and then calls the maps where it shows all these different stuff inside it. Okay, so it's going to call these two components. All right. So again, I use AI a lot, and most of this I wrote with AI. There were some issues though when you run this. This is where your understanding becomes important. Is you will end up with a CORS error. It becomes a very hard thing because from a browser, there's a very specific kind of error that you get with what's called as a pre-flight request, an options pre-flight request. So if you remember yesterday, every time what we do is we go into the Lambda function, and from the Lambda function, we add an API gateway trigger. And here is the API gateway trigger. And you can see here that this particular API is exactly what I have on the client as well. Okay. So if you go in here inside this client DNX, the same thing I have. Okay. So this is the main thing. Now, in API gateway, again, just to reinforce, I've talked about this a few times. If you go in here, you have to make sure that first of all your options route are allowed. But if you leave any, that is fine. It allows for any route. But the main thing is if you go into CORS here, this is where once I deploy, I'm going to have access control by just making sure only my that particular origin is going to be allowed. Okay. For now, it's for testing, so I'm allowing all origins. But finally, the easiest way of assuring security is just making sure your origin only allows for the domain from which your traffic should come, which will be my amplified domain. Okay, so that's pretty much it. For headers, if you remember, all of this last time I did. Okay, but for the pre-flight, right, it's a very tricky thing where what pre-flight really does is the browser sends an options request even before a post request is going to be sent, to see if that is going to come back positive or not. You don't have any control of it, and most modern browsers automatically do that, for which your Lambda function needs a little bit of workaround. And so this I didn't show in the code yesterday, but when you do write your own code, just make sure that you specify what's called as the course headers. Okay, and so where options is going to be one of them. So options and post explicitly you have to declare, and every time you're returning, you have to make sure that those headers are included. For a 200, okay, there should be these headers included. For a 400, not okay, it's this header should be included. For a 500, 502, whatever it is, you're returning it with these headers. Okay, and it's a DynamoDB error, for example. Remember, we are inserting all this into DynamoDB. I didn't even go through those steps because hopefully you all have seen it before, but that is one very important thing to remember, everyone, that the options pre-flight request requires some massaging in the Lambda function, and the Lambda function, you just have to declare what are all the different headers that you're going to be allowing, and along with the post request. Okay, this is something AI assistants didn't really help me with. You just theoretically have to know a little bit of an understanding on what pre-flight requests are and how to work around them. Okay, because the common knowledge is only API gateway. If you configure CORS, it is done. Not really for web applications. That's just one extra step. All right. So now once you do that, that's it. I've shown you all the demo, and you get the output. So I'm going to leave you all with a thought, everyone. Okay. So I'm going to do Seattle to, let's say, New York. Okay, think about what happens. So here it's this long route, west coast to the east coast. Okay, think about what is happening here, right? So the places API, like I said, is first of all a very pricey function. But what it does is it doesn't exactly compute every latitude and longitude, but it does it. I have made it in a way that every 5 kilometers it goes and does a 5 kilometer radius search. Okay. And so what is happening is it kind of, you are not accumulating too much data. Okay, but when you do something like this long a journey, which maybe, I don't know, you can see here that I'm getting a 503 error. Okay, think about what exactly happened. I'll give you all a clue. What is the API gateway timeout? Think about it. Okay, and so if the timeout is going to be increased, what do you think is going to happen? What happened here is exactly is going to happen. And so we are going to try and overcome that, hopefully with a solution tomorrow, and I'll demonstrate that. Right? But with that, yeah, so this is the final result, everyone. And maybe let's do Armonk New York to New York, New York. So you can see here it's only 1 hour exactly. And so it probably is not going to come up with anything. Okay, because it's too close. And these are all edge cases that I have to, take care of. Let's do Buffalo, New York to New York, New York. Okay, so we can see here that this is ultimately the final output, everyone, and hopefully this makes sense. Again, this video is not meant to be that long, but it maybe went through, so it's 6 hours, and it's giving you pilot right here, and then flying J right here, and then participant Gulf right here. All right. So with that, have a good rest of your day, everyone. These things we are building one upon the other, and we are taking it to the next level. And so the next thing I'm going to do is show some other gotchas, and then deploy this on AWS Amplify, and we should be done. All right. Thank you again, everyone, and hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, please subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and if you haven't watched, watch it from the first week. This is our third week, and it's our web application. And this is something I'm really hoping to publicize as well. So with that, I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.